Today's episode of Lions of Liberty contains a little bit of adult language and a whole lot of fun. So hide the kids, grab yourself a drink, and enjoy the show.
You're going the easy route. You're swimming upstream. We're going salmon style. That's what we're doing.
Exactly. We're the Salmons of Liberty here in California.
What I find, though, is that New Hampshire, because it's a small...
It's all right. We can all take a moment to laugh at Salmons of Liberty.
We can all enjoy that. That was a good joke, Mark.
I'll be rebranding the show as that in a couple weeks.
That's going to be the spinoff.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Clair.
Welcome back, my LOL cats, to the Lions of Liberty podcast, your home for great conversations about the ideas of liberty. And we're going to have another one today, a little roundtable discussion with a very special guest in this episode number 212. And that's important to know because you can find the show notes today featuring links to everything we discuss over at lionsofliberty.com/212. And before we get into the show, I want to remind you about our great sponsors at libertymaniacs.com, your home for killer Liberty gear. Whether it's t-shirts, bumper stickers, you name it, they got it. libertymaniacs.com. Use the discount code Lions of Liberty to get 10% off your entire order. That's Lions of Liberty. Get 10% off your order. What more can you ask for? Well, besides 100%, but come on. You got to pay something here to our man, Dan McCall, who's actually fighting a lawsuit against Bernie Sanders of all people. And as I mentioned today, we've got another one of our famous roundtables where I will welcome in a few guests to discuss some Liberty topics of the day over a few adult beverages. Yes, indeedy, it is time for another edition of Libertarians in living rooms drinking liquor. And because nobody needs to hear me talk to myself for an hour, whether I'm drinking or otherwise, I will now welcome in my panel of guests, starting with a gentleman, under the loosest definition of the word, of course, who happens to live just about a mile down the street from me, over there on Culver Boulevard. I almost gave your full address away. He is our resident Rand Paul watchdog, the ranter, the raver, Mr. Brian McWilliams.
That's me, baby.
What's going on?
I haven't been watching Rand Paul as closely as I had. I know that he did get elected, well, not elected, but the Republicans in Kentucky did name him as their candidate in the primary.
And what I'm sure was a very nail-biting moment of whether he was going to win that primary. So
yeah, a lot of people going shrugging and being like, "Yeah, well, obviously."
When you say you're not,
talk like that,
when you say you're not watching as closely, are you saying you watch him now from the street instead of like from right outside his window, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I installed an app on his phone, so I don't really have to do that much actively now. I hope he doesn't. He doesn't listen to this podcast. It should be fine.
Well,
we won't know it's there.
All right, and are you having an adult beverage over there, or I don't want to be drinking alone here?
Well, should I recount the adult beverages we've had?
I know you were at happy hour.
Ciders. So. I've had a Fireball shot chilled, which was disgusting, by the way. Drink your Fireball warm, people. Otherwise, it's syrupy and gross, thick. It's like
who are the 22-year-old girls you were out with drinking these fruity drinks?
Oh, you want me to reveal? You want me to pull back to the kimono and tell you who I've been drinking with?
Maybe you should say that
not be in the room.
Maybe you should save that one. Rico, come on in. I know you're sitting right there next to Brian. We can't keep this charade up any longer.
Peckerhead?
That's right. Usually hailing from Cleveland or sometimes Hawaii, or did you call me a peckerhead, by the way?
I did.
All right. I just wanted to, I glossed over that insult as if it was nothing, but I don't want to let it go. It needs to be rebuilt. And what are you drinking there, pal?
I'm drinking a combination of Bud Light and Johnny Walker, as any upstanding libertarian would do.
It sounds like things should go really well here today, based on what I'm hearing from you guys. And, I know for a fact that lastly, but not leastly, we've got a special guest on with us today. She is a longtime libertarian activist and writer. She is currently a contributor to the Libertarian Republic. She is Miss Avens O'Brien. Avens, welcome to Lions of Liberty.
Hey there. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I believe you are also drinking along with us tonight.
I am. I'm drinking a hard ginger ale, but it's one of those twist top off things, so I don't think it's that hard. Really.
Is that like a Mike's Hard Lemonade or kind of thing?
It's probably in that spectrum of alcohol, but I had my hard liquor is still packed up from a move, so I went with this.
Now, Avens, there's a reason we have you on the show tonight. You're actually going to come back on the show in a few weeks for a more formal interview, but you were actually at the Libertarian debate that took place last Monday in Las Vegas, hosted by Penn Jillette. And For me, for people listening right now, they're hearing this on a Monday. I'm going to let you behind the scenes for a minute. This is being recorded before the weekend, before this debate is actually released on The Blaze. Look, I don't watch The Blaze. I don't even know how to watch The Blaze. I'm probably not going to see this thing till it finds its way to YouTube. But you were there live, and you're going to be sort of our expert witness, so to speak, at what all the shenanigans that went on there at the debate. You were live tweeting the whole thing, and you wrote a nice little write-up for us. So we're going to use you as a sort of our insider here on this. But before we do that, why don't you kind of give everybody the quick Avens O'Brien elevator speech? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with the Liberty Movement and say, I don't know, 90 seconds or less. I'm not going to time you, though.
Sure. So my relationship with the Liberty Movement is, I was actually born into the Liberty Movement. It's like, what's that quote from, like The Dark Knight Rises or something, where Bane's talking about being born into the darkness, and
the rest of
you had to adopt the darkness, right? Like that's me. I was born into this. The light blinds me, etc. So my parents were libertarian activists who worked on the 1972 Hospers campaign. They knew Murray Rothbard back in the day, things like that. And I was raised in a crazy libertarian, like Ayn Rand quoting, homeschooling libertarian family. And so I've been doing libertarian activism literally my entire life. And in 2006 to 2008, I was actually vice chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. And then I've been involved in non-Libertarian Party stuff, but a lot of localized activism. I go to a lot of different events, and I write for a number of publications. So I'm just always around to be. A lot of my non-libertarian friends see me as like that libertarian they actually like. And so I'm very happy to have that particular special designation in people's hearts. And so, I would say, my biggest contribution to the Liberty Movement is being just a Facebook agitator that creates discussions where libertarians and non-libertarians have a lot of conversations, and I enjoy it thoroughly.
I mean, I do notice that about you, like on your Facebook posts. I mean, you're always looking to generate good conversations, and it really does seem like you have people from across the spectrum. I mean, you get the crazy, hardcore anarchist libertarians in there arguing, but you also get people that are clearly from the left. A lot of people that are clearly just like independent, regular people that don't necessarily think about this stuff too deeply, but do like to have these conversations when they don't feel threatened by, a crazy libertarian. So you somehow managed to be one of us and have maybe more so than many of us being raised this way, essentially. And yet, you're not scaring them away like so many tend to do.
Hey, hold on. I do have a follow-up question here.
Follow away.
So you're in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's always, New Hampshire likes to paint itself in the colors of liberty. Yet when it comes time to vote, it's like, 2% actually go for libertarian candidates. Give me your take on that, because I feel like there's a disconnect between the way that they like to brand themselves and the actual opinions of the populace.
Well, I think that New Hampshire is an interesting place because when you look at New Hampshire, yes, they don't tend to vote libertarian themselves, but when you actually look at the at factors of the state. New Hampshire is the only state with no seatbelt law if you're over 18, no helmet law if you're over 18. It has no sales tax, no income tax. And there's a general spirit in New Hampshire. Even the Democrats have gun licenses, and even the Republicans aren't like overly aggressive on reproductive choice. I find that it's an interesting middle ground of kind of a transpartisan situation sometimes. And then you get the hardline Republicans, the hardline Democrats, but you find that there's just an interesting avenue where people really don't want, they don't want more government than they have generally. There's certainly some contingents working on raising that, but and it has changed. I mean, I've been gone I moved west in 2010, and so there's definitely been changes there. But I would say that it's a fairly libertarian state in some ways, and of course the Free State Project has kind of made a name for itself there, for good or ill. And so I don't know. Growing up there, I mean, it was a great environment to grow up in. And when Free Staters are like, "Why did you move?" I'm like, it was such a wonderful place to grow up in, but it's a very difficult place to like I don't know, become yourself, especially when everyone knows.
I'll tell you what, those guys really want you to move to New Hampshire. I don't mean you per se, but like everybody. Like if you,
they're adamant.
You cannot say that you want to do anything but live in New Hampshire for some of these guys. I got into like a crazy Facebook discussion with some of them like a year ago. Most of them are great. I've had a couple of guys from that Free State Project on the show, but some of them are like, if you're not moving to New Hampshire, you are a Nazi and you are part of the problem. Like, whoa, I like Southern California. What can I say? I'm not going to move because there's a few laws I don't like.
Well, do
exactly.
we want to deconstruct things from the inside? You guys are playing into it. Oh, you're going the easy route. You're swimming upstream. We're going salmon style. That's what we're doing.
Exactly. We're the salmons of liberty here in California.
What I find though is that New Hampshire, because it's a small.
It's all right. We can all take a moment to laugh at salmons of liberty.
We can all enjoy that. That was a good joke, Mark.
I'll be rebranding the show as that in a couple weeks.
That's going to be the spinoff.
Need to get a new logo designed.
But here's the thing, is that New Hampshire is a very small state. There's 1.1 million people or so. And I grew up in a city of about 120,000 people. And it's a neighborhood, like I go into New Hampshire and people know me and they recognize me. And like it's some woman that knew me when I was a kid who babysat me, just I run into her at the supermarket. And so what I find is what I love about living in SoCal is that there's an anonymity that happens when you live in a city of millions of people. And so there's a great quote from I think like The Great Gatsby where the woman says she loves large parties because it's the only place where there's truly intimacy and privacy. And I almost find that the case in a city like Los Angeles where people aren't paying attention to me because they've got all sorts of other stuff going on. Whereas in New Hampshire, it's these small towns and everybody wants to know what the heck you're up to because they know your mother and your brother and everyone. And so I love living in LA from a libertarian standpoint because I feel much less like I'm being spied upon by my neighbors.
And yet you are being spied upon. We're all being spied upon.
Well, everyone's spied on by the NSA, but if I'm in New Hampshire, I'm also getting spied upon.
You have people at your windowsill, literally, once again.
Like you and Rand Paul.
It's pretty impressive that you can knock out a Dark Knight Rises quote and a Great Gatsby quote with a quote within a 10-minute span. So,
I got more.
So kudos.
I'm a movie.
Well, she's the only one that was actually at the debate. The rest of us were cramming, trying to watch the YouTubes of the debate and read the recaps. Well, she's just got time to read Gatsby. She was there. It's not fair, frankly.
All right, so before we get into this debate, I just want to do a quick check to see if Rico's alive. Rico, you still there?
I am. I'm just enjoying the banter.
Okay, good. Good.
He knows he's not quick.
I don't want to hear from you. I just want to make sure your heart's still
I'm the slow one of the group.
He's a lawyer used to having specific times when he can make arguments. He'll yell objection.
I object. Yeah, exactly.
Did you? Yeah, just occasionally yell that you object to something.
Or rejection, which is what he yells after he gets turned down at bars.
I'm just going to ask for a recess every time you ask me a question, and then we'll come back in an hour.
And he gets paid for that time.
Yes.
Oh, no, I forgot about your hourly rate. We should probably hurry this thing along. So, as I mentioned, Avens, you were at this debate, and you're the only one on the show that's seen it at this point, but hopefully by the time this airs, some people will have.
Wait, I saw the early part, which was 2 hours.
You didn't see any of it. This is not aired anywhere yet.
No, the RT debate.
We're not talking about that, man.
No, it's
Where
not the
you
RT
been?
debate. No one
Oh my God! I watched 2 hours of Marc Feldman debating.
We can
the JV Libertarian.
Hey, man, we can talk about it. I like a lot.
He
I
has
like
a
those
lot
guys.
of notes.
I have a lot.
I will attest to this.
Half of the notes are just me typing, "Who the fuck is Kevin McCormick?" over and over again.
Don't you always think Kevin McAllister when you read Kevin McCormick?
Yes, which is why he's got my votes.
Full-blown reference.
The fact that he puts his hands on his cheeks and screams into the camera every question doesn't help. And he also hugged a homeless woman covered in bird feces at the end of the second debate. That's a weird reference.
Wait, did that really happen? Oh, wait, that's a Home Alone 2 reference.
That was so good.
Kevin!
Kevin! It's like Jesus. She's covered in bird shit, Kevin. Ugh.
Like Jesus.
Wash your hands.
Back away. Don't worry, I will link to Home Alone 2 in the show notes so everybody can go see what the hell we're talking
about. We will be watching Home
I
Alone 2.
have 4 birds at home. I actually really understand this problem.
Avens is covered in bird shit daily.
Pretty much.
I live in bird shit. Okay, so I did actually watch that RT debate too. So why don't we touch on that for a bit? Because you know what honestly, I know nothing about Kevin McCormick until I turned that on and discovered he existed. I didn't really get much of a vibe from him. He seems like a nice guy, and that's really all I got. But I really enjoy Marc Feldman and Darryl Perry. I've interviewed both of them, and I mean, Darryl's what everybody calls the principled guy, the guy that's here to push the message, and I think he certainly is. And I really enjoy hearing him try to push that quote unquote purist message. And Marc Feldman has really surprised me because I kind of brushed him off originally as just this quirky old Jewish doctor that was running, and he is a quirky old Jewish doctor, but he's actually like a really intelligent guy, and I think he has a really unique take on a lot of things while still really kind of espousing a lot of the same beliefs. So what did you think, Brian? What do you have in your notes about these guys?
First thing I had to start off with is everybody has to go and just watch the RT debate. If for no other reason than the host of it, the male host, is one of the most odd persons I've ever seen in my life. I think
wasn't that Jesse Ventura's son?
I hope to God it was.
It was Tyler Ventura, right?
Honestly, it looked like a son of Richard Nixon and Christopher Walken. That's what he reminded me of, because he looks like Nixon, and he kind of talks like, he's like, welcome to the RT Libertarian debate. But then he also has his cadence like Christopher Walken, and it's bizarre. You got to watch it.
Yeah, that is Tyler Ventura. That's Jesse Ventura's son.
Oh my God, crazy. Anyway, so that guy aside, though, I liked Feldman before. Like we had talked about the fact that Feldman had grown on us, but then in this debate, he actually took a step back for me because he was just talking crazy shit. Crazy shit.
What did he say that was so crazy?
He
didn't rap, which was disappointing because I love his rap.
Let me lay him out, okay? I did like he acknowledged his own boring demeanor with a horribly flat joke about anesthesia. So kudos to you, Feldman. Okay, so here was one quote. So he said he was asked about, kind of how to handle corporations. He goes, companies are not designed to help people. What we need to do is change the environment and make sure that if they make a profit, they have to be socially responsible.
Whoa.
What the hell does that mean? That sounds like some liberal talk to me. Is there any way to spin that positively?
I like how you got so mad that you audibly got further away from the mic. The anger out of your mouth pushed you against the wall.
I know. I had to back up because I was like, I'm yelling. Their eardrums are going to explode. But no, it was like, what is he talking about?
Rico, do you object?
What's that? I object.
There we go.
But literally in that circumstance, what's he saying there? You're going to force corporations to what? Accept green initiatives, to give back to society. If you're going to force them to even out, if you're going to make for every cent of profit you make, you have to give half a cent of profit back. It's a ridiculous statement.
Like on nonprofits, you have to kind of set forth an objective, a mission statement, so to speak, and follow those guidelines. And it's almost sounding like he's saying if you're a corporation, which is really just a structure for tax purposes, that you need to follow those guidelines as well, which is definitely involving a lot of government control into the whole matter.
Yeah,
not very libertarian to me.
Right, and he prefaced that. Actually, here's the funny thing: what you're saying is obviously correct, but he also prefaced by saying that corporations are designed to make profit, and they owe it to the shareholders to make profit. So it's like, okay, so you acknowledge that these are private individuals that are playing into this corporation, and yet you still want to undermine the corporation via government force, coercive force. There's no other way to do it.
So I'm curious though, as I don't know what the exact quote was, and I don't know if you had quoted him exactly, and if I just didn't hear it properly. But I mean, the notion that that corporations may have a social obligation, not a governmental one, but one that people that the market can choose to reward a corporation that kind of plays nice in terms of social responsibility isn't non-libertarian. Like if I decide that I want to shop at one store instead of another, or one company instead of another, because I find that they're friendlier to the environment, or uphold my stances on, let's say, gay marriage, or whatever the position I might hold is, then as if we as a society, not as government, but as a group of individuals who each shop somewhere, decide that they're going to go to one business instead of another because they like their social practices on top of their business practices, that's not necessarily unlibertarian. I just don't know what his quote was, so I'm not going to...
No, I agree. You have a good counterpoint there, and I agree with it. And maybe I'm reading too much into it because I was just so disappointed by the way he brought it across. Because basically he said he wanted to change the environment to make sure that if they make a profit, they have to be socially responsible. So maybe it is to your point, what he's saying is that we have to change the cultural environment around it, where people are saying, okay, if you're going to make a profit, we insist that you give back.
Yeah, it's not exactly clear, I guess, from maybe that exact quote, but I don't know. I guess from actually interviewing him and hearing him other places, I'd be surprised if he really advocated government force in that sense. But he could be more clear about statements like that for sure, especially because when most people hear that, they're going to think maybe government or what laws and that kind of thing.
Right.
He also had a kind of a weird discussion point when they were talking about the whole food waste issue, which I guess that's a big deal, apparently. But he was criticizing the high calorie, low fiber foods that were marketed to the people, and he was very against that. And I don't have the exact quote, but it seems to. Oh well, Brian does.
I have that in my notes as well.
Well, I'll turn to the man to my right then.
Rico and I were talking about this as we were having a drink before to prepare for the blog or for the podcast. So, but we were talking about this actually as we were preparing, quote unquote. And yeah, the quote is, and again, I don't know the exact quote either, but the quote is essentially he says that he blames a lot of the food waste, like Rico was saying, on marketing that targets people and forces them to buy into these high calorie, high fat foods, and basically says that what we need to do is fight that somehow. And then he went on to say something, and I got to pull up the exact quote because this was crazy. And I listened to it 4 times, and I still couldn't get the exact thing. But he
listened to it 4 times.
No, it was crazy.
I'm just the image of you just going back on your YouTube and trying to write down this quote is entertaining to me.
On YouTube, I couldn't. It wasn't long enough. It's a 2-hour debate of these 3 undercards. So every time I click back, it would go back 7 minutes, and I would go insane.
They really need like a 15-second back button.
If I could interject, just reading Brian's notes, which I find funny.
You may interject.
Here's a bullet point. Feldman goes off the rails sometimes. It's like Ron Burgundy debating. That's almost enough for me to support him.
It was. Seriously, it's like Abe Simpson. He's like, let me tell you. And he just goes off on his weird tangent. But no, okay, so let me get to the point here. Is that he's talking about this high-cal foods and how marketing is the problem at selling it, which again is anti-capitalism. Look, if they're going to market what they're going to market, you can't force people to advertise.
Like kind of like Avens was saying, like, I don't know. It's one thing to say, these companies are marketing things that are bad for people and that should change. But I guess we just have to be clear about how that change should occur. And I guess it's maybe not that necessarily clear what he was trying to say.
Maybe he's calling for a populist uprising against these marketing tactics, which might be the case. But without specifying, it just comes across as advertising bad, corporation advertising bad. And let me get this. I had to get this one thing out because it was so weird. So after he said that advertising was to blame, he then went on this weird journey into Bizarro land where he then said that, hold on, let me look at my notes here. Okay.
This better be good.
No, it is good. He said something along the lines of that, people, we're feeding people, you know what? People only need to eat when they need to be fed. And
I do remember that line, actually.
You remember that?
I remember him saying something about people like only eating when they need to be fed or something. Yeah, I was like, what?
We should only feed these people when they need to be fed, not when he says we shouldn't feed them when they're hungry. We should feed them when they need to be fed.
It was an analogy. It was some kind of analogy he was trying to make, but I'll admit it went over my head.
It came across as basically sounded like he was like, let's just starve these people until we have to feed them
Central
food.
Planning on when people get fed.
I mean, look, I could be missing.
Maybe I have to do a follow-up interview with Marc Feldman and then read all these quotes back to him and let him expand more.
Exact notes.
Maybe I can get him on right now, actually. I have his Skype, I mean.
Dial him up. But look, and I like Marc Feldman. Like, I went into this debate being like, all right, I can't wait to hear what Marc Feldman has to say. And then I was like, just shaking my head going, what the fuck is Marc Feldman talking about? He had some good points, though, too. He had a great point in foreign aid for Israel, that Israel's required to spend a lot of the aid we give them on U.S. weapons.
It's something like 70% or 80% of the aid is actually...
It's just a subsidy. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. It's corporate welfare for the United States.
Yeah. And then he had a good plan on, they asked these guys about their plan for taking care of the elderly and the infirm and that kind of stuff and how we'd handle that. And he said basically that you get a tax credit on a charitable donation. So you can write that off 100% if you want to give $1,000 towards helping people that are.
I love that plan of his, that whole whatever you, I mean, if you send all of your tax liability to private charities, that's your tax liability.
Right, exactly. And I think that's great.
And nobody can be like, oh, well, we're not still getting the money. I mean, you're not getting the money, but the money is still going to services that people need.
Right. Can I kind of shift gears here a little bit?
Shift away, because we do need to shift.
My gears.
We do need to shift to the main event debate sooner than later.
This is something I was actually thinking about a little bit today and yesterday, and it ties
Deep
into
Thoughts by Rico.
Maybe some of the statements Feldman made could be chalked up to inexperience, because none of these guys, save for Gary Johnson, have any political experience really at all. Unless I'm missing something, I'm probably.
Well, John McAfee was battling the Belize government.
Yeah.
that is political experience. I mean,
well schooled in, like Hillary Clinton's been in politics for 30, 40 years.
You mean he might not be crafting his statements so much ahead of time as other people are.
Donald Trump's been, in the public eye. He knows how to work the media, but these guys are novices. And is the Libertarian Party, would it be better served if somehow someone could move up through the ranks? Is it even possible to move up through the ranks, local, state, federal, then run for president with a strong libertarian background? Or
I mean, I think it's hard to get libertarians elected on any level, to be honest. So that's kind of like a tough sort of bar to have for candidates, I think, at this point.
Okay.
Well, I was reading there's exactly one senator who's libertarian as of right now. So it's
like a state senator.
A state senator, yeah.
Exactly.
It's clearly.
I mean, there's local representatives. There are libertarians in local office all over the place, and that's awesome. But I mean, it's tough. It's tough to make that sort of, having been elected as a libertarian, as a standard for running for higher libertarian office, because it's so difficult to even do.
But the Libertarian Party is the third biggest party in the country. We keep reading about this. So why isn't anyone, at the state level? Why isn't, if you're at the state level for a few years, then you move up to...
Well, maybe you got to join the Libertarian Party of Ohio with your man, Marc Feldman, and get more involved, because that's how it works. I mean, it's a matter of what people are doing on those state levels. Exactly.
Give me a Feldman Rico ticket.
All right, so let's move on to the main stage here. Excuse me. Things are happening in my throat. Now, Avens, I know you ran into Darryl Perry. I know he attended the Las Vegas debate, so I don't want to leave him off this thing. I think we already talked about Kevin McCormick as much as we're going to. Although I'm sure he's a nice guy.
I liked him except for like one thing. I won't go into it. But,
he seems. I don't know what to say about him. Like, he just seemed to be. I don't know. He seemed like a generically, like, not really wrong on that much, but he just didn't strike me as, I don't know. He just struck me as just kind of like a white bread, like, libertarian-ish dude.
Let me just say one thing.
And maybe I'm not giving him a fair shot because I was kind of distracted when I was watching the debate.
I want to say one thing because it was so funny. Kevin McCormick. So he had one.
Kevin! Do that every few minutes.
That really struck me is that they asked about foreign aid, and he goes, "You know what? Instead of teaching people how to shoot, and kill people, and that comes back around to hurt us," which I agree with that. He goes, we should be over there helping to teach them to fish and to farm.
Again, I think it was an analogy, but I did remember that point as well.
Is it teach a man to fish and he'll be able to eat for the rest of his life, something like that?
Yeah, or
something like that. But
or just don't shoot that man. How about that?
He came back around to it though, and later on, like they asked him again about U.S. troop deployments and bases, and he goes, "Yeah, they shouldn't. U.S. troops aren't helping us abroad," and which I agree with, of course. And then he comes back around to it again, and he's like, "Fishing. Yeah, we shouldn't be having bases. We should be teaching people to fish.
We should have fishing bases."
Like Troy McClure out there.
Maybe he's just laying. Maybe he's laying the groundwork for the Salmons of Liberty.
We got to get.
Yeah, I already got a call back in
podcast. You got to get Kevin McCormick on there. He'll be our man.
Hey, maybe Salmons I will.
Of Liberty.
Maybe I will. Maybe he'll get the nomination. Then I'll have to have him on. All right, so Avens, if you can stop your giggling for a moment. See, we have fun in the show. I told you.
It's great.
So let's talk about Darryl for a minute, because I know you talked to him a bit at the debate. I know he was in attendance, though not invited to participate. I would probably call Darryl, like, if I was going to tier these guys, like, on tier 1A or tier to whatever, like right below those top three, because I do see a lot of people talking about him. And I've seen a lot of Facebook chatter, at least, about a lot of people that plan to support him at the convention. So, I mean, he's not being treated by debates and by a lot of people like a top tier candidate, but I don't know, from minor delegate chatter I see, he is being considered by a lot of people. So you want to just give your impressions of Darryl? I don't know how personally you know him. I mean, I had a great interview with him a few weeks ago, but what did you get from him just in the short amount of time you might have spoken to him about his thoughts about maybe not being in the debate and his kind of prospects for this Libertarian nomination?
Sure. Well, I mean, Darryl and I have known each other on Facebook for years, and every year he sends me a very sweet Christmas card that tells me that I'm awesome. So he's fantastic. Actually, I was very surprised when I got it there. I was like, oh my God, I'm awesome. Thanks.
That's what Rand Paul says about my Christmas cards, I'm sure.
No, it's great. Like
tomorrow's Lions of Liberty headline: Avens O'Brien admits that Darryl Perry's been sucking her.
Count. It's either, hey, fuck you, Rand, or hey, okay.
No, I appreciate this about Darryl, though, is that he's thoughtful, and he and I was very surprised to get a Christmas card that I still have it, and it says like keep being awesome, and it's really sweet. But anyway, I've known Darryl for a while. He moved to New Hampshire after I had already left, so I didn't get to know him as part of like the Free State Project, or actually he might have actually been. I don't know when the hell he moved. I think he moved in 2012. So yeah, we missed each other in New Hampshire, but I've been kind of paying attention to him. You know, he's kind of the libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party when it comes to he's definitely a staunch anarchist. And I have all sorts of love and respect for that. You know, not most of my friends, but a large chunk of my friends are anarchists, and and that's definitely kind of the subset of libertarianism I often hang in. So, when it comes to Darryl, I didn't talk to him about not being included in the debate. But you know, he definitely expressed a little bit of disappointment when I posted it was a casual Facebook post where I explained why I'm fond of John McAfee, and I didn't really mention anyone. I just said John McAfee, Petersen, and Johnson, and both Darryl and Feldman both commented on my status to be like, "Excuse me,"
with broken hearts.
Yeah, like, and I felt really bad about it, because when I write a long article or something, I make sure to include other people, and both Perry and Feldman I would consider probably like 4 and 5 in terms of their, you know, attention getting or level in the, you know, so I'd really, that's what I'd say is you got the top 3, and then like Darryl and Marc are probably 4 and 5. And in terms of delegates supporting him, I've seen a lot of delegates say that they'll support him in the first round of voting. I don't think he's got the numbers of the other 3, but you know, a lot of people come to the convention and don't make their decision until they're there on the floor, watch the debates, etc. Or the debate. So you know, who knows? But no, I think he's doing a great job. I think that a lot of times someone like that, whether or not he gets the nomination, you know, he influences the conversation in a more libertarian direction. You know, when you're up in a debate at some point and you've got someone like him making sure that the conversation stays very libertarian and stays very, you know, anarchist, then you know, it pushes the debate in that direction, which I think is good, you know. And it's kind of like when Ron Paul is in the Republican debates, or Rand Paul's in the Republican debates, and it's, you know, bringing up conversations that might not happen otherwise. And so regardless of where it comes from a, you know, voting perspective, there's the fact that can be injected into a conversation. So yeah, no, I hung out with Darryl. We got a picture together, which was great. And I think it's his profile picture on Facebook right now, which was cool. And no,
more evidence of the stalking. Go on.
But no, he was a total joy. We had a good conversation, and I mean, it was really classy of him to show up and you know, and talk to each of the other nominees or candidates. And I think someone posted on my Facebook feed today, and I haven't verified it, but they said something about him saying that McAfee was his second choice after himself, and they said that he said it on Free Talk Live today, and I don't have it, so I don't want to, like, you know, state that for, like, you know, for sure, because I didn't witness it, but someone told me that he actually spoke well of McAfee as possibly a second choice if he doesn't make it through the first round of voting in the LP convention. So that was cool to hear.
So there's some intrigue there, because I mean, while I mean, we'll get more of your thoughts on this process of actually nominating, maybe towards the end of the show. Because I mean, while clearly I think Gary has the most support among delegates, probably right now, it's not clear if that's the 51% support he would need on the first ballot. And things could get interesting on the second ballot if a number of the candidates' supporters sort of coalesce. So so that could get really interesting. But we'll talk about that towards the end real quick. But so why don't we get into this debate? I mean, you were there live. You know more than anybody here what actually happened. You're actually the only one that knows what actually happened, because the only thing I know is from your tweets and your article. So you are the primary source on this one. So we're just gonna maybe just kind of touch on each of the candidates, and maybe we'll kind of try to maybe get a good and bad point from each one and talk about that for a bit, and then we'll just get sort of the overall thoughts. First of all, what are your kind of overall thoughts of the setup of the debate? I know it was kind of it was sort of Penn, I guess, doing like a town hall style thing with each of them, and then they all came up for sort of like a rapid fire round at the end. Was that the basic format?
So I think it was 4 sections, and the first section was each of them was introduced, came up, got to do a 1 or 2 minute introduction of themselves, and then they were asked a specifically pointed question about themselves, and about what I'm pretty sure Penn asked McAfee about Belize, but then so each of them had a question that was focused specifically on themselves and their campaign. And then after that, they all went off stage, and then they brought out 3 podiums, and then that was from that point forward, they were all asked questions together. And the second round was celebrity tweets or questions. And so there were a bunch of cool people. Lawrence Krauss actually asked one of them, which I was really surprised. He asked a question about science funding in government.
I'll admit to having no idea who that is.
He wrote the book. I'm gonna fuck it up. The Universe from Nothing, I think. I might be getting that title wrong, but he's a great author and speaker on like atheism and stuff.
So he's a guy people know.
Okay. Yeah,
I was pissed that Vince Vaughn and who's the star of Big Trouble in Little China? I'm blanking on his name right now.
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell. Thank you. I read that Vince Vaughn and Kurt Russell didn't get questions.
Yeah, no, neither of them.
Aiken.
Yeah, Clay Aiken had one.
It's all for me.
It was interesting. Like Clay Aiken had one, and then
Aiken.
Dee Snider asked one.
Were the celebrities supposed to be? I mean, was it based on like choosing celebrities that might sort of be libertarian-ish, or was it more just
that
like
were walking by outside of the venue at the time?
No, it was specifically. I think Penn was looking for people who might be informed enough to ask an intelligent question, but not necessarily people who were remotely libertarian. And I mean, Drew Carey was asked a question, and Drew is great. He's libertarian. But like Dee Snider was funny. Like his question, if I remember correctly, like because it was funny because there's a video that was going to be playing that shows them asking the question, but for the purposes of recording it, Penn actually like just asked the question for them, and we just kind of pretended we were watching a video of it, and so then it gets injected and it gets added in the magical post-production process. But what he did is Penn tried to kind of like be whichever person was asking the question. So when it came to D's, he was like, "What the fuck is a libertarian? And how are you going to save us from Donald Trump?" And it was great. It was really funny. Like,
so Penn basically did like 8 impressions of celebrities.
Yeah, it was,
and only you get to see that live. That's so cool.
It was weird.
I knew I should have canceled out of work and gone.
It was thoroughly entertaining. And so they asked questions. There were questions asked of them, and a lot of those questions, what I liked about those is they were an opportunity to kind of test the waters in terms of how libertarians are going to answer questions to non-libertarians. Like, let's say that the libertarian nominee gets into a main debate. The questions are not going to be geared towards a libertarian answer. And
they're not going to be about, you're not going to see like,
will you end
Mike,
the Fed?
Yeah, Mike Wallace is not going to be like, would you make a Jewish baker, bake a gay Nazi cake? Yes or no, Mr. Trump? Like, that's not happening.
Tell us your detailed explanation of the non-aggression principle.
Right? Like, that's not the kind of question. So what's interesting is the questions were things like, there are many tracks of science funding that or scientific research that don't necessarily have an immediate profit. And how would you deal with that? Don't you think government should help with some of that in the form of grants, et cetera? And what was interesting is each of the candidates, for the most part, when you ask a bunch of libertarians questions, you get different styles of answer, but typically, it's going to be no, government shouldn't do that, right? What was interesting is I think that question, if I remember correctly, is McAfee basically said he thought the private industry could handle that, and I think he cited like SpaceX or Elon Musk or something like that, and then and similarly with Austin, but Gary Johnson gave the strangest response to that, which is he basically said, yeah, there is a justification for something like science funding. Gary. And then he stated, I actually quoted it because he said government could offer prizes for scientific achievement, like maybe $1 billion for a cure for cancer. And that was just very, that was weird. That was weird to see happen in the debate because everyone else is
the weird thing is that I'm not surprised he said that. And I should be surprised that a libertarian candidate said that, but I'm not. Because I've heard enough of Gary Johnson to not be shocked by that.
Well, that's the thing is every time I see Gary in a debate, I like him less. And I feel really bad about that because he very well might be the nominee. And I want to support whoever the nominee is. But every time he's in a debate, it feels like he doesn't understand core principles. And it's fine to deviate from core principles, but you should at least be able to justify why you make that move away from, if you take a core principle that the government should not do something or that we own our bodies or whatever your core is there, like the NAP, or then you should, if you're deviating from that, that's perfectly fine. You just have to justify how you got there. But it's like he forgot that that's the core of it.
Did he forget or did he never know? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, to me, I just go, Rico, I think I heard you talk. Go.
I almost did.
Objection!
You sound like you're slowly waking up.
There was a lot of different booze in my throat at the time.
Avens said nap and it woke you from your nap.
It wasn't just booze in that throat. You guys were talking for a while.
Oh boy.
God. Is Gary Johnson
I object.
a libertarian? I mean, is he like libertarian like Donald Trump's a Republican?
Well, he's a libertarian if you define libertarian as fiscally conservative and socially liberal, which
someone was mad about that.
I was mad about that today in the Lions of Liberty Forum, which you can join by searching Lions of Liberty Forum on Facebook.
Thank you. There's that point. Well, but look, like we're talking about, especially what Avens is talking about there, and you guys are talking about with this, saying $1 million to cure cancer. That was basically Hillary Clinton's answer for how to cure cancer as well, if you recall from a few debates ago.
Put up $100 billion and someone will cure it.
Yeah, she's like, with the government money, we'll spend millions and we'll cure cancer.
She said millions and Johnson said billions. So Gary is to the left of Hillary on the cancer issue.
Way more serious about that.
Yeah, he really wants to cure cancer, and throwing money at it from the taxpayers is clearly the solution.
Here's the thing. I listened
Maybe we could get rid of the FDA and we could test more of these things instead of spending 12 years in trials, right?
That would be a great answer.
That would be an excellent answer, right? There's so many good answers that I understand that Gary right now seems to be wanting to appeal to the liberal side of things, which I honestly think
it feels like he wants to get this libertarian bullshit over with so he can just go be a socially liberal, fiscally conservative candidate like he wants to be.
We're his vegetables and the presidency is his dessert.
I don't know. It's funny because there are so many excellent answers to various questions that can appeal to conservative audiences or the liberal audiences, which still maintain a libertarian core. And there's so many options, right? When it comes to scientific research, the government stands in the way of that sort of thing all the time. And it's unfortunate because there are so many people who have horrible diseases that need to be cured. And if we could get rid of the FDA or loosen regulations surrounding it, then we could see a whole host of new drugs and new options for people. That's a beautiful inspirational response, but God damn it, Gary, you don't get it. That's what's killing me is he doesn't seem to understand that there's a perfectly valid libertarian response that can appease the hearts and minds of liberals or conservatives, whichever you're trying to appeal at the time.
I listened to a 3-hour podcast with Gary Johnson on the Joe Rogan show today, and one of the first things that Joe asked is basically what's libertarianism? What is it? And Gary Johnson basically said, Well, nobody really knows. It kind of doesn't have a definition. I mean, when you ask people, I mean, he was sort of referring to like asking people on the street. Nobody really knows in that sense, in fairness. But he was also kind of saying there's no definition. And then, I mean, it's one thing if you say people don't really know, but here's my take. But really all he could say, well, he's like, for me, well, it's because I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And I just hate that because, okay, so how many regular Republicans does that describe? I mean, you're basically saying I'm a Republican who doesn't hate gay people and likes an abortion's fine.
Not that many, really. Let's be honest. But
I mean, I appreciate the attempt to make libertarianism more mainstream.
Right.
I do think that most people in this country are kind of fiscally conservative and kind of socially liberal, and I think that he's trying to tap into that. But I think he's doing so in a really, really uninspiring way, and that's unfortunate.
But
Andy looks like a bird.
I hear that where, I think it was said on Joe Rogan's podcast where he's like, yeah, most people are, in fact, fiscally conservative, socially liberal. But are most people fiscally conservative now? Because I think
it's a dubious claim. I don't know.
Is kind of tapping into the claim where most people are like, gimme, gimme, gimme. Right. And someone else pay.
I kind of get the idea that most people don't give two fucks how much money the government spends, to be honest with you.
I think that too. And, the whole fiscally conservative, just like people don't care about that.
They care how much the government takes from them.
Right. Well, they don't understand. Yes. Yeah, they don't understand where it's coming from all the time. They're like, how dare you? But please give me more money, even though they don't understand it's coming from
speculators. It pays for everything.
Right. It's pennies from heaven. And, but we're already past, if you look at it statistically, we're already past the point of no return because the point of no return was essentially 51% of the American populace.
You sound like Bane now.
51% of the American populace is already on some sort of government subsidy in one way or another. So you could argue that is the voting bloc that should be inspired to vote for their best interest, which is, of course, keeping the government tap open. So the rest of us are sitting here going, okay, well, shit.
Apparently I'm sitting next to Mitt Romney because he said this 4 years ago.
Well, Mitt Romney was right then, wasn't he?
He had a much better set of hair.
He had a set of hair.
Well, speaking of Mitt Romney, while we're on the subject of Gary Johnson, he recently announced that he would be, I guess, it's not official, obviously, and nothing's official because the delegates get to choose this, but he's basically has come out and said that he's going to choose this guy, William Weld, a former governor of Massachusetts, as who he wants to be his VP anyway. Again, that's chosen by the delegates, but I think the delegates do often go with the presidential nominee's choice.
Weld or Will Weldon, who is also known as Wesley Crusher on Star Trek The Next Generation. Because that's Wesley Crusher. He's got my vote.
Yeah, that's Will Wheaton. Come on.
We don't need a podcast anymore.
Shut up, Wesley.
Get your socially liberal, fiscal conservative wills right. Damn it. I don't know, but I've seen two pictures of him. One of them he's in with Mitt Romney, and the other he's with nobody. But in both of them, his face is really red. Like when someone who's like really pale gets drunk and like their face turns red. That's what he looks like in every picture I've seen of him.
Like the New York Giants former head coach.
And that's all I know about him. But I've read a couple articles, and I mean, look, it's kind of the same take I have on Gary Johnson. He sounds like a guy who's pretty good for a Republican, like not that bad for a Republican. But is that the goal of being a libertarian and espousing a libertarian ticket? Is it to have people that just will kind of appeal to other people a little bit more because they're not that hardcore, they've got experience, and then what? Then what happens? Did you inspire people about the ideas of liberty, or did you maybe inspire a few more people to click a button in a box?
Well, this was our ongoing debate when Rand was running as well. I mean, I honestly, personally, I like to rate these people over the coals like Gary Johnson, and I'd rather have any of the other two candidates be. I'd rather have Petersen or McAfee over Johnson. But at the end of the day, look, a lot of this is going to happen incrementally. We like to say this is the time for a libertarian candidate because people are dissatisfied. You got Clinton and Trump. You got two pieces of dump to vote for. And now's the time. But at the same time, people aren't ready to accept that. So you can't have somebody like Darryl Perry would have no chance in hell. We all can agree on that, I'm sure.
But none of these guys have any chance.
No, I honestly think
McAfee.
I think John McAfee has a real chance
to win the presidency.
To be president.
Okay, well,
You're in there where Donald Trump is a nominee, and McAfee is arguably more successful than Trump because he wasn't given $800 million to start with, and he hasn't gone bankrupt. He's very successful. He's very intelligent, and he's lived the life. I mean, he owns all his shit, unlike Trump, who tries to play it off and insult people. John McAfee, you watch him. It's hard to watch McAfee speak without being like, God damn, I like John McAfee.
I do like John McAfee.
I love him.
I'd love him to be president. But
I disowned my own father, and I wrote John McAfee a letter, and I said, John McAfee, please be my father. He hasn't written back.
What are we talking about here?
Salmons of Liberty, I believe.
Now, speaking of John McAfee, since you mentioned his name 3 times, Brian, so like Beetlejuice, now we have to talk about him. Now he's here. He's actually in the studios with me. He's right behind me. But Avens, you have actually endorsed formally John McAfee, so you are somewhat biased in that sense. But you did do a pretty fair summary of the debate on the Libertarian Republic. So we'll link to that in the show notes. But why don't you just start off? Why did you endorse John McAfee first of all?
Well, I like John a lot. I mean, I actually, just for the record, like I really like Austin personally. We're friends. I write for TLR. And Gary and I met.
And he still kept you on even when he endorsed someone else.
Yeah, right. Actually, he has been fine with us endorsing or writing about any of the other candidates. Doesn't have an issue with that. One thing I really love about Austin is as an aside is that Austin is very, very fond of amplifying voices he thinks are intelligent around him, and he doesn't really mind if they disagree with him. So even though I'm known as a feminist writer, and he's very much known as not a feminist advocate in any way, shape, or form, he was like, oh, I really like what you have to say, and you make me think about things, so I want you to write for me. And so that what I really appreciate about Austin is that he loves to cultivate different views around him, and he doesn't have a lot of like sour grapes over people not agreeing with him, and he just wants to amplify really intelligent people, which I really appreciate about him.
I like how you start your McAfee endorsement off with a minute about how much you love Austin.
But the thing is, so for McAfee, I mean, McAfee is just he's a character in a lot of different ways, and I mean I've met him a few times now, and we're friendly. I know his wife.
What does he smell like?
Cigarettes.
That's what I would have guessed, actually.
Old Scotch, like 3-day Scotch that's been sitting out, and cigarettes, yeah, and
straight up Winston-Salem, like old school,
like the cigarettes my mom smoked.
Yeah.
But John, it's funny is I've gotten to know John a lot through Judd Weiss, and so basically when Judd approached me like very early this year and said, hey, John McAfee is talking about having me as his VP candidate, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. And he was like, what do you think of that? And we were like, weighed out the pros and the cons, and as a result I got to know John a little bit more through Judd before telling Judd that he should do it. And of course Judd made his own mind up, but I was happy to say, hey, I think this is a really cool idea for you. And so I really got to know John through Judd's passion for him. And then as I looked at how he really, I know that his stances weren't 100% libertarian before. I certainly can see that if I read through some of his old stuff when he was like Cyber Party and right, other.
Yeah, Cyber Party's got a lot of iffy stuff.
But what's interesting is that like I think that once someone basically, I think maybe it was Judd or somebody basically just said, okay, here's the basic concept of libertarianism, and did and explained it in a way far more articulately than Gary Johnson. I think that just literally just meshed with the human being that John McAfee happens to be. And what I really appreciate about him is that he really does seem to like eat, sleep, and breathe the concept of liberty. And he's just like, yeah, I'm going to do what I want. And I'm going to, fuck whom I want. And I'm going to drink what I want and put whatever I want into my body. And there's such a sense of self-ownership and just kind of like self-responsibility that's in his own, just his entire persona, his entire, who he is, that I find that, both charming and also that I feel like he has that kind of that base understanding where you can bring up a libertarian topic to him that he hasn't been practiced on in terms of an issue, and he's going to go, okay, let me assess that to the first principle that I understand, which is I own my body and I own my mind.
Yeah, Avens, I just want to compliment you. I think you have completely and very eloquently expressed exactly why I think all of us, essentially are McAfee supporters at this point, and you really.
I mean, I like him a lot. I'm not going to formally endorse anyone, but I mean, I think what you're about to say is my feelings as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's essentially what we all feel is that we all acknowledge that in the past, like you said, the Cyber Party, he's had some things where you say, I don't know if I agree with that, but to his being, he is a living embodiment of libertarianism. I mean, the man has lived it. He believes it. And like you said, it's something where he doesn't have to overthink it. It's just what he naturally believes and what we would hope that many other people naturally believe before they get brainwashed and conned into buying into this system. So, yeah, well done. I think we should cut that soundbite and that John McAfee should put in his next epilepsy inducing commercial.
Well, I think one of the big things, though, is that, we talk a lot about, when we're talking about libertarianism, we're talking about talking to non-libertarians about libertarianism. We talk about waking people up, right? We talk about introducing them to the principles of liberty and for them to suddenly be awake and just get it, right? So when I look at John McAfee, I look at that he's somebody who personally was fairly libertarian in his own lifestyle. And, he was around a paradigm that said, oh, of course, government should take care of this and blah, 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 and public works programs or whatever the hell he was advocating for, because it was all that was the paradigm he existed in. And then when someone woke him up to libertarianism, he suddenly looked at what he felt about his own life, and then he was woken up to that concept, and it came together, and so then he was woken up, and there he was. And so I don't think we should attack somebody who 6 months ago said something different when it's clear that they have actually when they've clearly done that assessment and woken up to it, and here they are. And I think that's one of the biggest things I say when I'm talking to other people about waking people up to liberty is that if everyone wants to be free in their own personal lives, they have something that they want to be able to do, whether it's, marry the person they love or take whatever drug they want, or just take care of their family or have an abortion or whatever it is. And so many of us, have that desire, even non-libertarians. And it's that moment in which we connect to them the idea that everyone else should have that right as well. And that's really the essence of getting people to embrace liberty. And I feel like John McAfee has done that. And so that's why I'm so gung-ho about him.
I mean, Darryl's been called the pure libertarian, and I think he is in a certain sense. But to me, John McAfee feels pure in the sense that I don't think he stayed up late last night reading Murray Rothbard till 4 a.m. to come to his beliefs. Right. I think he just believes this. It's just the way he feels about life and how people should be treating each other, and that it just comes across as very genuine when he speaks.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like Austin, he has sound bites. We talked about this before, where Austin, I appreciate him, and he's a very intelligent man. I like him, but he comes across as very canned, and especially in debates, it's like soundbite. I
mean, this is pretty much
it's like he could give two shits.
It's like his advisor woke him up and said, "Hey, you got a debate. Get in the car. We got to get there in 2 minutes." Austin Petersen, I agree with Brian. I like him, but it feels like he was saying everything he wanted to say in front of the mirror for the last 5 days.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's what Avens said in her article, that basically it sounded like he says good things, but it does sound very rehearsed, and it probably is rehearsed. I mean, I don't know, if I had a debate I was going to, I would probably rehearse some of my answers too, just because I would be so nervous because I've never done this before. So, I can totally see why you might over-prepare and then why that would then come across. But his actual answers are for the most part, pretty good.
Yeah.
They are great. He over-relies on Jefferson quotes, I will say. It's like, and for my 15...
Yeah, you got to mix in a little Madison, Austin. Come on.
You know who's great? Black slaves love him. I can't. That's off color. I've been drinking. But hey, Jefferson did have a lot of sex with a lot of slaves. Let's be honest with ourselves.
It's a fact. And Austin has not mentioned any of those quotes.
Austin! Gary, that's how Gary Johnson can finally win a confrontation with Austin.
Kevin!
He can call him out on Jefferson's slave having sex.
Why is Gary Johnson kind of winning, if he is, other than the fact that he was governor?
He is winning, and it's perplexing because you think about libertarians as smart people who would analyze things honestly. And he was
governor, so therefore he's the best.
Yeah,
which is kind of what I was saying before.
Let me toss out a theory, and then Avens can respond. She's been in this party for a really long time. So my thought is that many people, and look, I have not been actively involved in the Libertarian Party at all. So I am an outsider, just giving a perspective on what I've seen.
Mark would yell at me if I ever capitalized L's in our articles.
You're right, I would. Because there's a difference between the party and the philosophy.
There is. I agree with you.
Good.
Remember,
then I was correct to chastise you.
Phone calls, be like, what did you do?
I don't think I ever called you about this. What have you done?
Angry text with a lot of emojis.
We're never going to be Lions of Liberty like this. That was a flashback. Flashback in 2011. Anyway, see, now I don't even know what I was talking about. God.
Talking about something.
No, I got it.
Work here is done.
I got it.
Listen to Lions Liberty podcast.
I got it. No.
LionsLiberty.com.
But basically, I think that a lot of people in the Libertarian Party have a very strong desire that really becomes more powerful towards election time, towards big election time every 4 years, that somehow whatever principle can get shuffled to the side because there's a need for political acceptance. And I see all this talk about we just got to get acceptable people out there. We saw it in 2008 with Bob Barr. Oh, he's a Republican. He's a congressman. He's respectable. We can put him up there. We saw it in 2012 with Gary Johnson. Oh, he's a 2-term governor. People like him. He's an acceptable politician. I see these words being used over and over and over. And I get it to an extent because, yeah, I guess you don't want people to see libertarians as crazy fringe people that have no way to actually run for office. And Gary Johnson gives a credibility in that sense. But are you sacrificing actually delivering a message and building a real movement of people that know what they're rallying around for this acceptance? That what does it ultimately get you if you're being accepted for things that don't represent what you believe in? Rant complete.
Go on.
Rico, any objections?
I agree.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that libertarians, and libertarians, each being an individual and having their own perspective on the party and what they need to do to succeed. I think that there's a lot of struggle to figure out, what level of I don't give a fuck are they comfortable with compared and then kind of like tempered with, I just want people to like me. And I think that's the human condition, isn't it? But I think that a lot of libertarians, I would say, I actually said this to Brian Doherty of Reason during the after party during after the debate.
I met Keanu Reeves once. Sorry.
And Kevin Spacey, right?
Oh, that's good. I'm
not going to have celebrity conversations with you. It's
I know. So I'm just busting.
No,
we'll do this. We'll talk about that stuff on Lions of Liberty After Dark, which we're going to record as soon as we finish this.
But no, I think that I was telling him that one of the most interesting things I found is that because there's some things about Johnson, there's some things about McAfee, there's some things about Austin, and there's some things about the other candidates that people have real issues with, and it's interesting because I've seen the fights, I've seen like the libertarians like at the conventions, like the bitterness and the infighting that happens internally, and they go like, oh no, I can't believe we're gonna choose that guy, and because I will be honest, in 2008 I was that person going, oh my god, I can't believe we chose Bob Barr. And I was furious about it. And I remember just being like, just really like taking my crayons and going home. And I think that there's a lot of that. And I think that that's a problem. And what I see is I'm in all these different groups. I'm actually in like Gary Johnson's campaign group, Austin Petersen's campaign group, and John McAfee's campaign group, because everyone's invited me to all of them. So I'm in these Facebook groups and watching people talk about these candidates. And they're saying, oh God, if this guy gets the nomination, it's the end of the party. This is going to be the end of civilization. And it's hilarious to me because all of them are saying about the other ones. And I've never seen so much of that about the top three candidates. So people are saying if McAfee is nominated, I can't handle it. And people are saying if Austin is nominated, I can't handle it. And people are even saying that about Johnson. And I'm fascinated because all of them, as I said in my endorsement, all of them have the potential to in some way embarrass us. They all have skeletons in their closet. And they're all like in their own ways, just, there are things that are unpalatable about them. But I'm so fascinated by the fact that there are such strong emotions about them. And I think that seeing as most people have never heard of libertarians and never given a shit about us, I'm kind of excited about the fact that there's so much energy and interest even outside of the libertarian spectrum about them. So it's going to be an interesting floor vote at the convention. And I can't wait to see what happens. I'll be there. One of you guys should come.
So this goes. I'm actually going to be in Mexico during this thing. So
we really talked about it. We're going to talk to Johnny Adams, the Johnny Rocket podcast, who's going to be there. If you're with him,
we're going to do a little show with him from the convention. A little preview for everybody.
Yeah, we're going to expand our on-site presence in the future. But no, I think you make a good point, and I mean, it's fantastic to actually have liberty debates. Number one, let's just sit back and be amazed that libertarian debates are actually televised
in any way, shape, or form, right?
And that we have multiple candidates that are actually reasonable, and we say, okay, yeah.
I mean, honestly, until this year, I never heard of the libertarian candidate until there was a libertarian candidate. Now, part of that's my lack of involvement, but I think that overall the movement is paying more attention to this, and I think that can only be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Well, I have a question. I know we're running up against the wall of time, but I have a question for you guys.
The wall of time sounds frightening.
Wall of time.
Isn't that from the movie? What is it? Time Chasers? What was that movie?
Lawrence Krauss wrote a book about that too.
But no, here's my question.
McAfee, we've got to get back to the future.
I got some bath salts.
Oh man, can we please reshoot Back to the Future with John McAfee as Doc Brown? And Austin Petersen as Marty McFly? Come on.
God, yes.
And then Gary Johnson would be a great George McFly.
So good.
Hey Brian.
Photoshop.
Brian, you got to Photoshop homework. Gary Johnson is George McFly. Austin is Marty. And McAfee is Doc Brown. Get on it as soon as we hang up this call.
Send me an email and remind me. I've had a lot to drink.
Oh boy.
But no, here's my question is, to your point, Avens, we're talking about people that come there and they say, I can't imagine voting for that guy, blah, blah. And to the point of also wanting to be accepted and want to be liked. Because Mark and I, we've mentioned this on podcasts before.
Hate each other.
Found to many times. For Ron Paul, who brought us into the Liberty movement, we were inspired enough that we said, okay, we're going to go door to door. And what we did, we found a lot of people who said, I really like Ron Paul, but I'll never vote for him because he won't win. And basically what that means is not really that he won't win. It means essentially what you said, that they can't vote for him because they don't want to say they voted for somebody that they feel had no chance of winning, or that their peers would say, threw your vote away, you moron.
Exactly.
And I wonder how many people in the Libertarian Party like saying, especially now in the era of hipsters we live in, that they are libertarian, but at the end of the day, they're libertarian on Facebook. They're libertarian when they're drunk at a bar. But when it comes down to it, they're going to vote Republican or Democrat because they don't think libertarian politics is actually ever going to be a thing.
Well, how about people that we look to, like Rand Paul, not endorse Donald Trump because he is the Republican candidate.
Yeah, agreed.
But he goes out on a limb and says, you know what? That guy doesn't represent what I believe in. John McAfee does.
That would be nice.
You know what? I'm going to step out on a limb here and say he would be the best candidate for vice president. Or vice president. I've also had a lot to drink.
If McAfee was vice president, I might consider assassinating the president. No, I take it back. Come on.
Oh, no, that's the cold open of the show.
Edit it out.
How about you get someone who actually has a position where people listen to come out and say, you know what? These two candidates are garbage, and I don't want either of them to be president, even if, I got to support the Republican. Fuck that.
Yeah, you want honesty in politics? Yeah, here it is.
Fuck that. I want John McAfee. I want Austin Petersen. Go listen to these debates and see what you think. How about someone who actually is established in the public eye? Go out and do that. That's what the Libertarian Party needs.
See, that's the thing, though, is they have to be established in the public eye, but if they're a member of one of the other parties, they really can't do it. And this is an interesting point that like Ron Paul has been speaking about the presidential race, and Ron Paul has been able to say, look, if you're not a fan of Hillary, you're not a fan of Trump, don't vote for them. I mean, if you're a libertarian, vote libertarian. And someone actually asked him, like, you can say this, but why isn't Rand saying this? He's like, Rand has to get elected again, and that's the case. Like, the fact
why does he have to get elected again?
I mean,
he's a doctor.
He is a doctor. He's got doctor
but at the end of
money.
the day, I mean,
Rand's like, I need this job, man.
Would you say that Rand is doing good things in the Senate or not? Because that's the key. Is like, I would rather. I mean, I'd love to have a Senate filled with people like Rand Paul or Thomas Massie or there are people who they're not as libertarian as I'd like. I will fight all day long with them on certain issues because I don't think they're libertarian enough. But I'd rather have them there than not in the office at all and have some Democrat or Republican. Yeah,
I definitely agree with you. I definitely would rather have Rand Paul there than not there. But is he really jeopardizing his seat? Is the Republican Party in love with Donald Trump? The establishment loves Donald Trump so much.
Right now he is. And I'll tell you, honestly, it's just because of the timing. I still think Rand would not have said vote Libertarian. To Rico's point, I do not think he would have gone out on that limb where he should have. But as it falls right now, Rand he had to go through a primary where Republicans had to elect him to rerun for the Senate as a Republican. So he's in a precarious position. So I can understand why he wouldn't. But hey, once this is done, it would be nice if he was like, hey, Trump, your mother.
I don't see Rand saying that.
Position where he's comfortable for the next X years. It'd be great if he did that.
You need someone to go out on a limb and actually, for any third-party candidate.
Says the guy who won't even reveal his name on a podcast.
But yeah, people.
His name's Rico. What do you mean?
But you need someone to go out on a limb and actually kind of endorse the Libertarian Party, I think, for it to have a legitimate chance.
Well, get more famous, Rico, and then you can do it.
We all know that if anyone's going to get famous, it's me. So hit your wagons to this star, guys.
All right, folks. So, Avens, just one last question. Would you say that there was a winner in this debate? Someone that stood out as like coming out looking the best, looking like roses, Liberty roses?
I mean, honestly, I would say that that overall, I think Johnson did. I think that Johnson lessened his opinion of him, like my opinion of him, as a result of the debate. I think that McAfee gave a very strong performance, and I think that. But I think that Austin Petersen probably did the most consistently well. And that pains me to say as the supporter of McAfee. But I told Austin afterwards, I was like, look, you were fantastic. I was like, you gave a really, really great performance. And you've made me really think about who my second option would be if it wasn't McAfee. And, and Austin was really, really grateful to me for saying that to him. But it really, Austin he's soundbitey. He's the lolcat for liberty. But at the end of the day, I find that Austin articulated our principles well, and he spoke to the left and to the right very, very well. And I was actually really impressed with his performance. So I would say that coming out of it, I think that people who are already McAfee fans are going to love him, and anarchists will love McAfee for how he performed in this debate. But I think that Petersen may have the most converts out of it. So if there's anybody who's watching and not sure, I think that Petersen might have actually taken the most converts.
Let me ask you this, because I've said this in a few podcasts previously, maybe one. I don't know. They're all blurring together like my vision. But the way I view Petersen is that I like him a lot, but I feel like this isn't his time yet.
Well, maybe he's laying the groundwork for the future. I mean, maybe he even knows
honestly. That. I honestly feel that way. I feel like he's making a strong showing. I feel like give him 4 more years because, I mean, we're talking about, if you want to talk electability, look, the dude looks very, very young. And I say give him 4 more years to kind of
hone 4 more years. 4 more years.
Hone his
of waiting
presence. He might find a more receptive population down the line a few years anyway.
Well, I'll say Austin's really
probably Trump or Clinton, whoever gets, if either of them happens to get elected, I think we might see a 4-year president and out.
Well, we shall see. And I got to say, Austin has really impressed me as well, just in the last few months with his campaign, because I mean, I have a lot of disagreements with him, maybe even fundamental disagreements.
Yeah.
And you can look back on, Christopher Cantwell's show and Pyramid of Pussy and all this shit, sugardaddy.com, whatever. Guess what, though? If you really look at the stuff he said and done, it's nothing outside of the realm of what normal men between 25 to 35 say and do sometimes. And I don't see any of it as a big deal.
Party, we also advocate that prostitution should be legal. So
and sugar daddy is not prostitution anyway, but whatever.
Website or a sugar daddy website, honestly, who gives a fuck?
It's all stupid. But
it's ridiculous.
But he has really impressed me with his ability to articulate the ideas of liberty and do it. I mean, Johnny Adams, you just mentioned him earlier. He called me last week. He's like, man, I heard your interview with Ron Paul, and I heard your interview with Austin, like back to back, and their positions are like almost the same. So I mean, if we're gonna, I mean, there's people that think Austin shouldn't be allowed in the party. That's just absurd. Like he's definitely a good advocate for a lot of the things we believe in, even if we disagree. So that's all I got, guys. We've gone very, very long, and it's been very, very fun. Avens, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know it was kind of impromptu, but I felt it was a good time to bring you on here to give your perspective on, as being the only one that's even seen this debate at this point.
I do think it's really funny that this isn't going to air until after.
It is funny. It's a little experiment.
What day is it? What year is it?
I don't even know. It doesn't matter.
The bottle of whiskey is gone, folks.
Yeah, Rico and I finished this bottle of Johnny.
Well, at least we accomplished something here this evening. And Avens, I know you're new here, so play along if you want, but I always close the show with a message that I like to send to our audience. And I know Brian and Rico
always
know it.
Drink your Ovaltine.
Always drink your Ovaltine. And also, of course, don't forget, guys, live long and live free. I could have prepped you on the ending, Avens. It just didn't occur to me.
Like,
yeah, I know.
You're like, oh, Star Trek, neat.